Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. And a warm welcome to the afternoon show. I'm Bill Arnold, and I am so delighted to have Tim Clark right with me in the studio today. We are going to be talking today about some of the hopelessness that exists among teenagers around the country, around the world, as a matter of fact. And I don't think there's ever been a time where there's been more people feeling hopelessness than there is today, and for a lot of reasons. Now, I'm not saying that it's just teenagers, adults as well. But when it comes to teenagers, the hopelessness and the consequences are quite radical. And he and his ministry, TreeHouse, is making a significant difference now in its 40th year as a ministry. And I have some inside information about it. You're going to love hearing about it. You're going to love hearing the stories. So let me just get on with welcoming Tim Clark to the show. Tim, this is going to be a great hour.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Appreciate you having us.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, first of all, you're not just a little ministry based here in the Twin Cities. You're getting all over the place, including international.
We are. As you said, we're 40 years old. We literally had our 40-year-old birthday party a month ago at the end of September. And, we grew up, Fred Peterson was a middle school math teacher.
I know, I know Fred a little bit.
Fred is, still around and very, very much a champion of this, of our mission. And it started by Fred and Dorothy realizing and sitting and hearing the calling of God that they could really mentor kids and teach and help and support kids more than they could by teaching math.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Okay, and so from 40 years ago, where it started, New Hope, our site number one, New Hope in Plymouth is still a site for us, a very strong site, and it's grown to where now, we're in 12 states. Okay, we are international. We're in Africa, soon to be 2 other continents.
Wow. As
we continue to grow, and the key for you is you talk about, every community has a need to have support, affirmation, and hope brought to their teens. And so our ability and our desire to unleash that hope, in different ways is important. So it started here. You're right.
It's incredible. And Tim, kids need a space where they can find acceptance, affirmation, they can be involved in programs, and they can build relationships and find support and even have a little bit of fun. Because talk about the average kid that shows up at TreeHouse.
Yeah, in some ways there isn't an average kid, but on an average night, as you talk about what TreeHouse is, you see teens, and TreeHouse is personified in schools today, in churches, in faith-based nonprofits. Okay, and so our programming is really going to. It used to be, and as Fred started, it was in houses. Okay, and then it was in churches, only. But we're in many schools by which we're doing, that mentorship support group and other things during the day and after school, as well as then in those churches. And what it really looks like is a place, you said, there's always food involved, there's always fun involved, and then, yes, there's faith involved, the F's, just as towards providing a inclusive space for kids to feel safe and coming to. And, It's not as if the world and teens are completely different than they were, Bill, in 2019. But even in a post-COVID world by which teens are having more and more difficulty how to interact with each other without a phone present, right? And the ability for them to learn those skills of talking about their feelings, of asking for support and help, and giving others support and help. Yeah, that's what happens on a night.
Tim, why do these kids just not go to their church youth group?
As many teens, many of them don't know church, right? Okay, and so they don't know what a church, would offer. And again, our programming, is faith-based, but it's very, very neutral as towards we just want to bring kids in the door. Okay, we want kids to see us live out Jesus. And we'll talk about Jesus too, and we'll pray. But they don't. A lot of their families maybe have been scorned by the church. Maybe there's some history, within their families from that way. Maybe it's just a context of a bias against it. Maybe they don't know anything about it. And so, we typically are a complement to a youth group within a youth program within a church. We will clearly go deeper than that, in the ability for us to, again, we affirm, we support. We aren't counselors, but we know and how to get kids to different kinds of therapy and help all the time. But we'll go much deeper than a typical church and youth group would. And so we see kids come many times a week, if it's in a church setting, to that church for different services, including ours. In school, we may be the one to actually, and our staff or other staff may be the one to invite them to church on Sunday.
Nice. Would you say, Tim, that some of these kids mostly that go to TreeHouse are on the margins?
We see hopelessness. The answer is yes. And we see hopelessness exude and just go out in so many different ways. And so we want to be inclusive, by which, there is in communities, urban, rural, and suburban. In different socioeconomic classes. It could be, somebody who, literally is part of a sports team, part of a theater team that also feels comfortable and wants to come because of what they're feeling or what their hopelessness may be because they're not achieving, what they feel their expectation is. It could be, somebody who has not grown up with supportive parents or with actually two parents. And so, yes, when you look at across the nation in our sites, yes, over half of our teens across the nation are on some sort of free and reduced lunch program. That's one of our metrics as towards, being able to align our programming and our support with families. But we want to make sure that everyone, as again, we talk about lovable, capable, worthwhile. Our TreeHouse truths, loved without strings.
Say that one more time, a little slower.
Lovable, capable, and worthwhile. Loved without strings, never alone, and I have a future.
Whoa.
We tell teens those, and we'll say it hopefully again in the hour.
We will.
But we tell
it.
teens that every night. And you know what? Adults should be telling each other that.
I agree.
As well. These TreeHouse truths go back to the beginning of time for us.
Yeah.
And those TreeHouse truths are not socioeconomic restricted. They're not community restricted. Everyone needs to feel that they're affirmed and that they can do and they can build confidence.
Give us a little sample of the kind of student, kid that shows up and has really a transformative experience.
Yeah, I
know you got tons of stories.
We sit in, so every week a TreeHouse site does a program called that is really unique to TreeHouse called Support Group. And Support Group is a place where typically 6 to 8 teens with 1 or 2 adult volunteer facilitators sit around in a circle. And they first state what the rules are, regarding confidentiality, regarding giving affirmation and support, not advice, that you have to respect each other. And then you go around the room and you say, my name is Tim Clark. I'm going to rate my week in this past week, and you rate it from 1 to 10, and you can't be a 5. Okay, so I'll go, my name's Tim Clark. Okay, my week this week has been an 8.9.
That's because you're on my show.
Because I'm here right now.
Right.
And then you list out a number of feelings. Okay, and we have feelings chart. I should have brought one of feelings charts, that are across the nation with us. And you lay out 3 feelings, 3 to 5 feelings that you talk about that week. And then you go around the room in doing so, and then you come back and each teen that wants time, to talk about, their feelings, talks about their feelings, and then the teens, not the adults, the teens sit there and affirm and support each other. And what's
Beautiful.
great is that over time, to your question, is that it's not the same group every week, but you do get the context of, hey, this is what you said last week. Wow. How are you doing with that?
Wow.
And is that still a challenge? Or I remember that. And to your concept of what those teens or feel, or as they're coming through, right now there's a lot of anxiousness and concern. It isn't just adults that are concerned about next Tuesday in the election. Okay, we actually did a survey recently, and over 70% of our teens, okay, are concerned about, and feel anxious about the election.
Well,
keep in mind the seniors are voting probably for the first time, some of them.
Sure.
Okay, but it could be a 13 or 14-year-old.
Yeah, Tim, is it safe to say that there's a lot of these teens with very buried feelings that they don't get to share, and they live with buried feelings?
And they don't know how to share,
well,
right?
Yeah,
so
of course.
that's to me, support group, Bill, is really a way to really peel back that onion and get into how kids feel. Right. And what's interesting is you hear those 3 or 5 words that the kids say and the teens say, and then they start describing. And what's interesting is then how the words and the descriptions manifest into other feelings. Okay, to your comment. And this is maybe the only place they've talked about this ever. Certainly probably the only place they've talked about it, this week.
Yeah. So evangelically speaking, you're kind of at both ends of the spectrum, in as much as this sounds very pre-evangelistic at times, getting people in the door, letting them feel loved and cared for and seen and heard and valued. And then when the time is right, you get an opportunity to share Jesus.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen. And again, we're very careful. We have a very strong relationship and respect our school relationship. Very strong. And there are places, in that by which we show the love of Jesus. We show by example. Okay. And then, we will allow the one-to-one mentorship or a faith-based larger group setting to it. But we first walk the walk. Okay, and we first show it from our heart. There'll be opportunities, even support group others. A teen may say, it was about 2 weeks ago, I was in a session where a teen goes, can I just sit and pray for you? To another teen, and that's great. Okay, but that isn't what necessarily has to happen.
And would you say there's a large percentage of kids that are bringing some specific baggage into the group?
Yeah, whether it be one piece of, quote unquote baggage or hurt that's in their backpack, whether it be multiple layers of it. And that's why we are very careful, that we're there for support and affirmation. We're there, and it isn't typically in one topic, one conversation, one night that things, get fixed, right? But for us to walk alongside teens, we're 13 to 18-year-olds, okay, 6 through 12th grade. And then one of the, as they say, one of the secrets, that isn't a secret from TreeHouse is once you're a TreeHouse teen, you're always part of TreeHouse. As we celebrate our 40th year, what's interesting is the oldest TreeHouse teens, okay, are frankly about you're my age. Okay, and the ability for them to stay involved and for us to do weddings and funerals and baptisms with alumni as they grow up. That's such a joy.
Tim, that window is so crucial and critical in a kid's life. You're an adult for a long time. You're an adolescent for what, 5 years?
Right.
Roughly?
Right.
And those years and the people that you go through those years are some of the most important people in your life.
Yeah.
And if you are without friendship, if you are without safety and security, or you can tell someone how you feel, you're gonna be at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah. And
then you talk about hopelessness, and you hear about kids now where they look at their phones all day long, and they're evaluating what they're being rejected from, or they never have time off.
No, it was, I was with a teen a month or so ago whose mother had taken their phone away, for a month. And this teen had complained about it. Obviously, we talked about it and different things. And the night I was there, came out and said, this has been the most liberating, was the word, month, of my life, right? And they just don't know what life is like. Without not just being and looking down at a screen, but saying that that's the way the world judges them, as well. And it fits into, we talk about faith-based, but we are very much in the ethos of grace. Those 13 to 18-year-olds, they're making decisions today by which we just need to love them for those decisions.
I don't know what that means, but say more.
Well, the concept of grace is saying there's no judgment from us.
Okay.
I make wrong decisions. Teens make wrong decisions, and whether it's about their brain not being developed, whether it be between where they are in their maturity, how many places can you be that a teen can feel comfortable talking about the mistakes they've made without somebody coming down on them?
Yeah.
Okay, that's who we are. Okay, we're that safe place to come, and hopefully they learn, but we're not telling them what to do. Okay, we're not admonishing them or judging them. We're loving them for that. And I think that's truly, to me, I would say, as an adult, I've learned a lot about grace, from working at TreeHouse, because that's been part of our ethos from day one.
Mm-hmm. Tim Clark is my guest. He's the president. Are you CEO of
President,
TreeHouse?
CEO,
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
One of the team.
He's the big cheese in charge. You can learn more about TreeHouse at treehousehope.org, treehousehope.org. If you have a question or comment about what we are chatting about, you can text your question or comment over to 877-933-2484. Well, it seems like just yesterday there was a presidential election. You believe it's been 4 years, and here we are again. And of course, there's some tension, there's some anxiety, and we need to be joined together in prayer and in unity for peace and for God's will to be done in this oftentimes fearful and divided time in our country. If you want to head over to myfaithradio.com and text the word vote to 877-933-2484, you can get an election prayer guide. Boy, isn't it great when there's a place where teens can feel like they belong. They can feel safe. They can open up. They can come alive, especially if they are carrying all kinds of baggage called hopelessness. And there's a lot of kids today that feel discouraged, and they don't feel like they've got a lot going on. And so this is a big need. And TreeHouse is a place where they can go and find acceptance and affirmation and friendship and food and a little bit of play. And it's a pre-evangelistic right up to the point where they can find out more about Jesus and even come to saving faith. So it's a fantastic ministry. And it's my guest is Tim Clark, who's the president and CEO. And Tim, this is growing all over the country, even international. But I really want to get to some stories, because those have so much interest to my listeners, where you can talk about someone that comes in and what happens.
Yeah. Well, so they come in, and while every path is unique, Bill, the stories that you see of just transformation of kids and teens starting to believe in themselves. Okay, as we had our 40th, last month, we told a couple stories, or we videoed and told a couple stories of alumni who, as teens, they've now come back, okay, and they've said, maybe we wouldn't be alive without TreeHouse, okay, or they certainly would not be as successful as where they are.
I know that to be true.
Okay, one of the young ladies, okay, who talked, I wouldn't be the mother I am today, okay, of an autistic child. I wouldn't be able to survive and thrive like I can, okay, without the skills that I've learned, from TreeHouse. And so those lifelong skills, as we talked about being, telling young kids, I tell my grandkids they're lovable, capable, worthwhile every day as I take them to preschool. But just think about a 15 or 16-year-old who's challenged in life, who just sees their hole of hopelessness digging and getting further and further and cratering down. What we do is we provide the rungs of the ladder to get them out, okay? And there are so many, stories, unfortunately, normalized of, self-doubt, self-talk that they can't do it, and all of a sudden then it turns into truancy. It turns into, I don't want to go to school today because I didn't do my homework. Then it becomes 2 days. Then it becomes 5 days. Then I'm a bad student because they're told that, okay, either, on social media, on their, texts, or by schools or by others. and it just snowballs.
And what kind of doors does that open in their life?
Well, you're right.
Drugs, alcohol, who knows what?
You better believe it.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I mean, we need to make sure we keep all those things out of our programming, okay? But it's very pervasive and very understandable that we are working with teens who their ability, their need to cope, okay, by doing things like, yes, drugs, whether it be, different ways. Cutting is still a big one. Okay, from that really self-destruction in some ways, and or then hurting others. That's all a part of what we hear on a regular basis. And so for our desire to get in there, this is part of what we were talking about is grace, to get in there without that judgment of what that coping mechanism was and is, but to love them and show them a different way and show them that there's hope and there's light above, quote unquote, the hole. That's what we're all about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So talk about the program in terms of the kinds of numbers that you have coming into the programs. I mean, is it on any given night when there's a TreeHouse event, are there 50 kids there? Are there 100 kids? What kind of numbers do you?
Yeah, in our 80 sites across the nation here, in 12 different states, we can be 80 to 100 kids in a suburban location, and we can be 3 or 4 teens in a rural site, by which either meeting at school or meeting at church afterwards. So I tell this story. It's very interesting. We, as part of our 40th, we brought all of our site leaders into Minneapolis. You wouldn't realize or to think about it, but we have a site in Pipestone, Minnesota, that the average age of the volunteer is 69 years old. And so it's the older generation volunteering and supporting and leading those younger and those next generations. And guess what? The teens listen to them. The teens, really react well to that. And the ability for us to really take into all types of teens and all sizes of populations allows it why, for a night, if we have 80 kids, we'll do 12 support groups in a night. If we have 4 or 5 teens in a smaller site, obviously those teens are together, in one group. But it really flexes in our curriculum and our training for those organizations, for our leaders, and for certainly the volunteers is second to none, by which it allows us to flex us towards the size of different groups.
Almost sounds like you're ready to give us a little pep talk on you're never going to retire. Because God will keep using you in important ways. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, you and I have known each other a long time. When I started out, when I was an investment guy and part of the investment program and subsidiary of Cargill, right? As you and I first met, and God had a different calling for me. Many years ago, I've been part of TreeHouse for 8.5 years now, and I've learned so much. And I just think as I've learned that, it's just the ability for us to put other adults in positions to meet God's calling. Ours isn't to put them in a widget that you have to do this or that, but just for us to see, whether it be staff, whether it be network site leaders of other organizations, churches, volunteers. We have so many opportunities of things to do. It's the opportunity by which to talk and saying, how is God moving your heart towards helping teens and helping a community see success by leading and growing the next generation?
Tim Clark is my guest. We're talking about treehousehope.org. You can learn more about that. It's on a mission to end hopelessness among teens. And it's not only national, but international. And kids today need affirmation and encouragement. Tim, when a kid comes to a TreeHouse program, what would you say are the 3 things that they need the most? They show up on the shores of TreeHouse, and they're hungry for what?
Well, first of all, they're hungry for trust.
Okay.
And
from who?
With teens and with adults.
Okay.
I'll walk in. I'm sorry?
They don't trust either?
They don't trust either.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So as you walk in, and I go to many of our sites, and so I'm used to being the new guy. Okay. And most of the time, I don't want them to say I'm the boss. Right.
Sure.
So I'm just another guy. And it's very interesting. It's not about what you say, Bill. It's how you act. Right. And so for teens to really build that trust, yes, it takes time, But in some ways, it doesn't take time. It takes action, okay, to allow the teens to talk, to look them in the eye, to give them the time of day and the presence and your presence. And so as teens come in, they're circumspect, okay? They're skeptical of everyone, even, the other groups of teens. Teens will come with either friends or foe or enemies or challenges, people they have at school that they may not like. Those kids may be coming that night too, okay? And they may have an altercation that day. So how do we really de-escalate and build into the context that teens need to feel that they can be trustworthy and that they can trust others, okay? So that's one of the three. Second is they just need to be affirmed. I mean, I do know, and I think the schools do a very good job, okay, in this. But boy, how many times does a teen and a young adult just need to be told they're okay? They have it. They have what it takes. They can do hard things. And again, back to that, they are lovable. Okay, that the world doesn't tell them that. School does. TreeHouse does. Yes, churches do, but maybe their family doesn't. Okay, or maybe there's an interaction, and certainly most what happens on their phone doesn't. So trustworthiness, certainly affirmation, and then for us to be consistent with them. They're just looking, and when people come to TreeHouse the first time and they're referred by other teens, we get two types of referrals mainly, other teens and then schools and county and other agencies. But as teens bring other teens, what they're doing is they're trying to bring them in because they saw that they received the support consistently that they're not getting elsewhere. So trustworthiness, certainly that affirmation and support are three different ways by which that's what a teen's looking for. Okay, they may not know they're looking for it, okay, but that's what they're looking for is they're yearning or as their parents are yearning for something for them.
Yeah, and teens know how to read a room pretty fast, don't they?
It's incredible.
Lightning fast.
Yeah.
So
authenticity is one of our keys as our culture as an organization, because kids can smell out.
Yes, they can.
You smell it out in a moment.
Yes, they can. I speak on Friday nights at a recovery group, and if you are not authentic, they're looking for reasons to write you off. Yeah. They want to write you off, as a matter of fact.
Well, they've been burned. They've been, scorned. They've been hurt.
Yep.
Okay. They've been felt pain typically by so many, and by themselves, by self-destruction. But that's where the concept of, you gotta be able to be present. Okay.
And I'm guessing a lot of them show up and they don't like themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. They think they like themselves. So they may think that their defense may be,
they're presenting an imposter.
Exactly.
Deep down, they're just hurting.
Yeah.
And they're just crying out for someone love me, notice me, look at me, affirm me.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting too that I've seen a lot of times in support groups. Again, we're not the ones as adults to call that out, but teens calling other teens out, sometimes abruptly. Okay, of just kind of, man, that's not what I saw today in school. Man, that isn't who you really are. Okay, both, in both an abruptness, but also an affirmation of the concept of who, I know who you really are, or God knows who you really are, or I trust and I can see and I support that I want to be your friend and move forward. Yeah,
but if you're at a TreeHouse event and you're 16, there might be kids from 5 different schools there.
Right. Yeah, it just depends on the community.
So it's not like your school, your class.
Exactly. Well, some are. I mean, when you look at it, if you're in Pipestone, if you're in Grand Marais, Minnesota.
Yeah, that's a smaller group.
Actually, so those are some of the, our programming is renowned, and and I say that it really hasn't changed from day one since Fred. How we distribute it, how we communicate it does, because the times are ever changing. But one of the most interesting pieces is in some of our smaller and rural communities, to how do we get over the hump of trust to communicate in these small communities, because everybody does know everybody.
Yeah, and Tim, everything we've talked about to this point applies to adults as well.
Amen. To me, that's where Bill, it was actually with you many years ago. I talked about something about the context of how reciprocal discipleship works. Okay, reciprocal transformation. And, the secret is, while we're for 13 to 18-year-olds, and that's our job, and that's the mission, is to unleash hope, within teens, across all communities. Boy, it's just fabulous to see the stories of the staff, of the volunteers, of the organizations that we work with, the adults, because, they don't walk in expecting or needing anything. But boy, you see their lives. And certainly, personally, my life has changed as I see how transformation is really, it's so courageous and brave what many of these teens do show in transformation.
Yeah. Tim Clark is my guest, and a very successful business financial guy, and God plucked him out of that and put him at the head of TreeHouse. Now he's helping kids not be hopeless and finding purpose and affirmation and love and security and trust and meaning and hopefully Jesus. That's the goal. We'll take a little break and come back. If you have a question or comment, 877-933-2484.
It's the afternoon show with Bill Arnold. Prime time, drive time. Let's get it started. Jump in your car. What's for dinner? It's the afternoon show with Bill Arnold.
I hope you've had a great day. Thanks for tuning in to the afternoon show. I've got Tim Clark here with me in studio. He's president and CEO of TreeHouse, which is an amazing ministry that's been around for 40 years. And they're on really a mission to end hopelessness among teens, and they do a great job. And so, Tim, I want to start hearing some really interesting stories of some kids whose lives were really changed by TreeHouse.
Yeah, I think I'll start, and this may take a little bit to unwind, Bill. But there's a young gentleman. I'll state his name as Jamal. Okay, to really protect him, because I didn't ask him this week to share his name here. He started coming when he was 13, okay, and he came to the St. Louis Park Treehouse, at the time. His older sister, okay, had been part of the program, so that's how he got in, okay, and that's how he knew to come to it. I've been to that Treehouse so many times because it's literally the one closest to our office and closest to my home. So, anytime I need, there, they know that they see me more often than not. I was never there in the years that he was in school, okay, that Jamal wasn't there. Every single time he was there. And he's a presence. He started out as a 7th grader at 6'8". Okay. And so when it comes to the basketball time before the meal, when it comes to how much food we had for the meal, okay, he was one by which there was always a presence. However, his presence was not only his size, it was his heart, and his heart to help teens and lead others. And so even as a 7th and 8th grader, because of his size, he was really kind of a de facto leader. But then as he grew, okay, and he became a sophomore and a junior, unfortunately in his life, okay, his father had already moved away. Okay, his sisters in some ways were raising him. And he, in a short period of time, he had, unfortunately, the situation that both his mother passed away. Okay, his father, who was estranged, had passed away, and one of his sisters had moved away.
Oh, my.
Okay, so he became the de facto leader of his family. He was hardly 17.
Wow.
Okay, in that. Fast forward. I drive a TreeHouse van to pick up teens for the Christmas party last December, so literally 10 months ago. And we invite first-year alumni back to that Christmas party. It was the party was going to be down at our Bloomington site at the time. And on my route, I get the route by which I go by Jamal's house. Okay, and he's living actually in an apartment with one of his sisters. And I pick him up. He's the first in. Okay, we pick up others, and he's got 2 other freshmen, that had graduated the year before of alumni. They wear tuxes to the Christmas party. Okay. But they do so in a way for them to then be able to talk to the younger kids about the trials and tribulations that they've had in their lives and how there is hope and that they show that you can do that. I dropped Jamal off last that night. We sat in the alley, of his apartment for about 45 minutes, and we talked through his life. Okay, he has spoken at different TreeHouse events about how TreeHouse has helped to be the one to give him hope and really has been the only consistent family he's had. And he talked that night about how, as now, a year out of high school, he's working as basically a preschool assistant, in a school. And he goes, I thought I wanted to work with TreeHouse when I grew up. I thought I wanted to work with teens. But Mr. Tim, what I've found is I really like working with young kids. And guess where he is today? He just started his freshman year at Bethel. Okay,
wow,
to go back and get
Christian college.
Christian college, you're right.
Here in the Twin
Christian
Cities.
college here in the Twin Cities. But he's going back to get a Christian education in young, of basically preschool education.
Wow.
Okay, and this is a teen who has unfortunately seen more of the travesties and unfortunate parts of life than I wish anybody ever would. Okay, and yet his consistency every week was showing up on Tuesdays and Thursdays to a place he knew was open. He knew no matter how many different staff members we had or if volunteers came through, there was a consistency of love and affirmation for him. And now he's given that back.
Oh, Tim, that he should have slipped through the cracks. Right?
Yeah. Even with his size.
That's what I know. Because there's so much working against him. Just the trauma of having a dad leave, and now dad is gone, and now dad's died, now mom's died. This is really hard.
It is, and again, we get into touchy subjects about trauma, which is, unfortunately, we do, suicide ideation is no less prevalent and more prevalent today. We do surveys, Bill, twice a year to our teens, okay? And certainly there was a blip in suicide ideation and isolation and bullying during COVID, but it hasn't backed off significantly since then. And to Jamal, the concept of things happening to his family, that while I won't go into details of saying, while they were accidental deaths, they were preventable. Okay, and for a teen to feel the guilt, the shame, of what has happened to their parents, and if and could they have prevented it? I mean, it's just so tragic and so deep for them to then be able to come and feel again that they're lovable and capable and be reminded of that. That's what we are about, but that's what needs to happen. Okay, and the best way for us in the context of not only Jamal, but I can give so many other stories, is a teen who has felt that pain, felt that doubt. Their voice is louder to other teens than any of our voices as adults would ever be.
It's so true.
Yeah. And that's where TreeHouse is, when we talk about, the leaders and the staff and adult side, each TreeHouse we have has a leadership council of teens. Okay, and we're trying to build leadership.
So
we're
smart.
developing leadership. That's one of my big things in life, is how do we develop young leaders? But it's also those teens are going to be more impactful, obviously, in their community with other teens than we are.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just part of how they learn and how they teach, and which is why for us, for TreeHouse, we may have the best ideas of what to do on a program night. We're going to let the teens, speak into it, as well, because we want them to see in a safe place if they can succeed. If they fail, how we can do it differently next time.
Yeah.
So even that sort of thing, as we were talking, our Plymouth New Hope site, site number 1 for us, it's great to see how leadership has developed amongst teens that were coming in on the fringes, not sure if they belong, very, very skeptical of adults, yet they turn into the leaders, in not only years, but in months.
And it's nice that that's out there where a teen can show up and say, I might be able to become a leader here someday.
I think that's one of our biggest opportunities to recruit other teens, is that teens can see the change in their friends and in other teens. And, and so while obviously, certainly those extroverted champions that are out there that can be magnets and bring other teens in are great. But I think just as much, it's the teen that sees a consistency of another teen going, what's making this person tick? And what can I get? Can I get something that they're seeing? I know teens are feeling that and seeing that at school.
Tim, I would call that positive peer pressure.
Amen.
Where you see teens doing positive things and you come alongside them and go, that's what I want to be part of, is this little movement of kids doing good things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's negative peer pressure where you're going the other direction and you're hanging out with the kids that are doing things that no one's happy that they're doing.
Yeah. And there isn't much positiveness going on in a teen's life as he scrolls. And he or she scrolls, right? I mean, there's not, they aren't being told positive or realistic expectations, in whatever they're looking at, and however they're working with social media and certainly texting. And so for our ability to, have that humanness show as people grow and as teens grow, that's the biggest impact we can have.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a little break and be right back with Tim Clark. He is the president and CEO of TreeHouse. You can learn more about the amazing ministry at treehousehope.org, treehousehope.org. And they're on a mission to end hopelessness among teens. Give me your three things again, Tim. What are they? We're
lovable, capable, worthwhile. We're loved without strings and never alone.
Yeah.
And we have a future.
And that goes for everyone listening right now. That's how I feel about you. All right, we'll be right back.
Psst, have you heard the news? Listening just got better with the new and improved Faith Radio app. No more restrictions, no more static, no more missing your favorite shows. Now, listen when you want, where you want, and share with everyone. When you need hope, encouragement, Jesus, it's right there on your phone. Text the word app to 877-933-2484 and follow the link or search Faith Radio Network in your app store.
All right, here's some truths I want you to hear: that you are lovable, you are capable, and you are worthwhile. You're loved without strings, and you're never alone, and you have a future. And that's just great words for any person, but they're words and truths that every teen should hear, in particular because there's so many teens today that are living in a state of hopelessness. And one ministry, one place that they can go to find all this, to be told they're lovable and capable and worthwhile and loved without strings and have a future, is TreeHouse, which is a ministry. Do we call it a ministry?
It's a ministry.
That's what I thought.
Oh, yeah.
And it's in all across the U.S. and also international. So Tim Clark is my guest. He's the grand leader of it. He's the fourth leader in 40 years. So it's a pretty tightly knit family.
It is,
yeah.
And I think that's part of the success over the time frame is we've kept it simple. We've kept the main thing, which is how do you create hope where hopelessness exists?
Yeah.
And how do you exude the love of Jesus and bring kids to a loving Christ, to
Amen.
A relationship to a loving Christ?
I love the formula.
Yeah.
So I know that there's so many stories of kids whose lives are so dramatically changed, and your story about Jamal was unbelievable. And I know probably got another one, don't you?
Yeah, I was debating what to say, but when any of the sites need help. Okay, they, in driving or with meals, they know to call, the office and they call me. And, I certainly, one of the things I cherish is driving teens, Bill, to and from. Okay, it's where typically we say it's windshield evangelism and windshield, kind of mentorship. It's where it really happens. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, it certainly isn't all bed of roses. You get the kids that really in teens, that's where they really unload. Okay, and just like with Jamal, where even as a young adult, we sat there and talked, for 45 minutes at the end. Okay, as he was the last drop off. Another story is one of our teens who had been coming consistently and been having significant behavioral challenges. And, frankly, we need to make sure that we have the right safety and security rules. Okay. And so unfortunately, a teen may cope by doing something by which it gets them, on the penalty box or on the sideline of TreeHouse for a while. Now we'll go meet with that teen. And this is what happened, with this teen. That I was the first driver back after he had been out of program for a month. Okay, now our staff had met with him during that month. It was not isolated by any means, but he had missed basically 8 sessions. Okay, and this is a team that very rarely missed, sessions. And, while this was a year or so ago, he was, 17. And so I picked him up first because that's what staff, it gives you a list and tells you to do. And he goes, Tim, I know you're part of this. Mr. Tim, can we just sit and talk for a minute? Okay, and I was consistent enough around him where he knew, who I was, and that he knew, that I was involved with those who he was closest to. And he goes, I need to tell you, I'm really sorry for the behaviors that I've shown.
Wow.
Okay, that caused me to lose this time here.
Wow.
Okay, and this is a 17-year-old man who is living in a dysfunctional family. Not the first time I picked him up, and it's not the first place I picked him up at, from the concept of there really wasn't a permanent house. But the concept of just how transformation and reflection can happen. So we pick up the second person, and he apologizes to her. Picks up the third person who's a brand new student. I'm picking somebody up for the first one night. I looked at the list going, you want me to do this first? And then I go, okay, Lord, I hope you're with me tonight. Okay, within this. And he takes the time to this female who's a year younger than him, going to the same school, to be truthful with what coping mechanisms and behaviors caused that allowed him to be pushed him to the sideline for a bit of time.
That's good self-awareness.
It was by there. So then we fast forward, and I'm in support group that night with this young gentleman. And it was a little tense because the others who weren't in the van, he hadn't had a chance to talk to, and weren't sure kind of what was going to happen, what was going to, and which teen was going to show up, which side of him was going to show up. And he sat there, and he goes, this is my name. My week has been a 1, okay, and I feel desperate. I feel hopeless, okay? And I feel that I'm not sure if life should continue, okay? And we obviously have, the privacy and reporting, mechanisms in place that we need to from a safety security basis. But as he unloaded that, he goes, but that's how I felt this week. And now, as I've reflected too, and he did say, I think God has touched my life this week.
Wow.
I think God has touched, I'll never forget that. I think God has touched my life this week, that I have the understanding that I'm here for a reason, that I have a purpose, and I'm going to try to not do that again. I mean, it's like a mic drop. Okay?
That's significant. That's significant.
It's a mic drop. And while that story is unique, the travesties and tragedies that our teens not only have happened to them, but they feel. Okay, and again, a lot of it is real, but it doesn't need to be real. Okay, you can put yourself into self-doubt, and you can put yourself into the need to cope without anybody else helping you. Whether it's adult or teens, but the ability for them to come and reflect and have a place by which the Lord can touch them, and Jesus can touch their lives, and Jesus can change their hearts. That's why our vision is that every teen learn what a loving relationship with Jesus looks like.
So good. I appreciate this discussion, and I love that the truths that you want every teen to believe, and you say this all the time at TreeHouse, is You are lovable, capable, and worthwhile, and you are loved without strings and never alone, and you have a future. Boy, that's got to speak into their hearts.
It does, and
It speaks into mine.
It speaks, just every time. It never gets old, Bill.
I can see why. I mean, I liked reading it 3 times today on the show.
Yeah, I mean, it just never gets old. And at our 40th, celebration a month ago, we talked about this is how we started. This is where we are today, and just think in another 40 years, how many teens and adults, have grown up every week. We're being reminded that they're lovable, capable, worthwhile. Now, we also have teens that have tattooed and put them on them, but yes.
Yeah. Tim Clark's been my guest. You can learn more about TreeHouse at treehousehope.org. We're going to take a little break. Hour 2 is just ahead. Dr. Bob Moeller is going to join us, speaking on the problems that come with divorce. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.